G'day friends and fans, welcome to Dave Talk Stuff, Ukraine War Update for the 12th of June 2026. I'm your host, the author, David Applegate. As the war continues, as does the war of words, I'll continue to bring you comprehensive news and analysis from inside the manosphere. This war is a threat to humanity. Ukraine is threatening further escalation of the war, which will only be met by further Russian aggression. Because Russia will not tolerate Ukraine much longer. Now, Putin's task is generals to find solutions. If I can think of some, they've already thought of a lot more. They're more experienced than I am. But as for drones attacking merchant ships, yeah, I could see several possibilities there. Now, we've seen with the US how they have escorts and successfully escorted ships, hundreds of ships, in fact. So it's not impossible for Russia to retask its current systems and deal with these drone boats. Now, it will require a few new systems built, which Russia may or may not already have done. They may be playing, they may be playing a long game here. Remember, the British knew everything the Germans were up to in World War II. Otherwise, they wouldn't, otherwise, I think they would have won, to be honest. You look at wars since, I honestly think. Now, this is an intense increase in escalation. Now, Russia is claiming 2 towns. The first in the buffer zone here in the north. And as we go around the map, there is some changes to the map, but nothing significant. But still, Russia's made headways and taken more territory in Kupiansk. They've been able to, as I said, they've attack forces made it to the center of the Kupiansk-Volozhsky area. That's all of this, that's Kupiansk there. But there's other towns, part of this conglomeration. The center part is known as Kupiansk-Volozhsky. The Russians are now on it, fighting again, and they have taken, have taken this town before. It's been reported, I think, 3 times now. Right. In other areas, very little movement, but lots of activity. And there's, river boats. Ukraine is still trying to send boats up the river. There are also infiltrators. There's all sorts of... This is a mess. Russians and Ukrainians are hunting each other in the state forestry. Ukraine has actually put out a warning. They believe hundreds of Russians have infiltrated this area. They've warned residents to stay back. Now, a lot of these areas were evacuated, but some residents refused to leave. And they're waiting for the Russians. But they're not openly taking any action. Like I said, I don't think Russia's going to got a mandate to advance too far, but Donetsk is definitely one they've sunk their teeth into and won't let go. But still, not much movement here. But movement here the Russians have advanced here, and we've advanced in Koshnikovia. More of Koshnikovia has fallen to the Russians. Still, the squeeze is on, and these areas are dug in tight. Now, allegedly, the Russians have taken, there's two different stories. One is the Russians have taken this, killing 222 Ukrainians, or 228. And the other story is the Ukrainians have pulled back to defensive lines. Other, of course, Ukraine Pravda and Kiev Independent say the Ukrainians are still fighting on, claiming to have inflicted thousands of casualties, of course. Every day, Ukraine claims to have killed thousands of the invaders. That's what they do. They fake it till they make it, right? Now, in other areas, Russia's made small gains. Again, nothing significant has fallen, but as you can see, they have increased pushed the front lines, clearing operations against the Ukrainians, still in some areas. And in most of the front, though, it is pretty much business as usual. Nothing significant has fallen. We are still maybe days, weeks, or months away from the fall of Koshnikovia. Ukraine sees every day it doesn't fall as a victory. And they've now, for the second day, attacked this land bridge here and this supply line here, which is mostly supplying to Crimea, not military supplies, but they aim to basically by cutting off the land bridge to isolate Crimea, they get the first Russians out. Yeah, Russians going to ram a huge missile about 11 stories tall, about dropping a bomb each size, the size of a car, on Kiev, and then go, that's our response to you trying to cut off Crimea. I don't know if, I don't know when, but I'm just saying the way Russia's responded in the past is timid compared to their capabilities. And yet Ukraine seems to think that they have some superpower that's going to make them immune. Yeah. No. Russian retaliation, you have no idea. It's the Putin. He's the moderate. You keep painting him as the fanatic. I'm telling you, he's the moderate. Okay? In Russia, good cop, bad cop. Good cop, he beats you. Bad cop, he stabs you until you're bleeding. Okay? He's only beaten you. He hasn't stabbed you. You're not bleeding to death yet. But if he lets the bad cop take over, yes, he will systematically one, two, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 cities. And Ukraine, maybe 12. And Ukraine is systematically bankrupt, unable to repay its debts, unable to revive. They've done it once already. blowing a huge industrial complex, military industrial complex, off the map. They've only done it twice. Even open source intelligence admits that Russia's got at least a dozen of these missiles ready, if not more, based on the Belarusia. They have hundreds of launchers ready to strike if they wanted to. They've shown that they have hundreds of launchers. Russia's so confident, and this is the mistake, that it's so confident that it's given weapons to Iran. That's a mistake. Okay? Although primarily those weapons are third-party transit. We all know they didn't come from Russia. They all know they come from North Korea, India, and China. Russia has decided to be the middleman in that little mess. But we don't know if or when Putin is no longer able to contain the demand to end this war. But the demand is, of course, to end this war in a positive outcome. Hardliners don't care about Kherson. They don't care about anything north of Zaporozhye. And they don't care about this corner. They want just the straight down, right across the front, just X, Y, bang. Then start building a wall. But in order to do that, they say systematically incinerate the Ukrainian forces. Putin is reluctant to do this. He believes it will drag the Europeans kicking and screaming into this war. Europe wants the war. They don't want to be in the war. Because a war with Russia, even if Russia loses, China wins. China will is helping Russia occasionally, and this is the problem. Russia's turning into a cat's paw. It's all fun and games, though, until the missiles rain down, and then no one wins. Okay? This war, no one wins. Okay? Ukraine either decides to lose this now or lose this later, but they're losing it anyway. It's whether they want to lose with grace and dignity and a little self-respect, or, as I suspect, Ukraine wants it hard and without lube and without tissues and without a little hug after. They want to be lying and bleeding on the floor so that the rest of Europe will pity them and carry them for the rest of their lives as poor victims of Russian aggression. It's all manipulation, folks. But as we look around the front, yeah. A little reminder. Empire Valves, that's empirevalves.myshopify.com, your one-stop shop for enchanting treasures and artifacts based on my writing. That's okay, the main. Alright. Moving on. Thank you for your purchase. Thank you for your support. Right. Ukraine has asked for... They just took out a loan for $90 billion. They just asked the US for another $7 billion. They also got from France, is it France or France, Germany, air defenses worth $9 billion. Now they want another $6.6 billion from some fund from Poland. And now they're asking allies for an additional $20 billion, right? for the Ukrainian Defense Contract Group. Everyone see that Russia is burning. We want to make all of Russia burn. All right, so they've killed a few people here and there every day with combat drones. "241 combat clashes. Russia's used more than 10,000 drones." Yeah, they use a lot of drones in swarms. Both sides. Most of them targeting each other's drones. But every day, you're racing to the inevitable. Now, I see a couple of things. I know I don't tell you all the time, but I'm going to tell you this time. One, we're going to see drone carriers. These are big orthocopters with a platform. So they land, open up, and or hover over a position, open up, and they release up to a dozen little short-range drones. The big drone itself is usually a one-way platform. Now, the disadvantage is if the carrier is shot down. So these are something you would price. These would be frontline, right? Not deep penetration. But for deep penetration, I see more varying arc missiles. One of the things about air defenses is if you know the type, you know the speed and range, you know everything. You have AI generated profiles. Ukraine is getting something like 25,000 computations an hour performed through satellite links with Taiwan and other defense contractors for its air defenses to track multiple targets, process data, and to program its drones to go through Russian air defenses. The problem with this alliance and reliance is the more Russia figures out and the longer it goes, the more weaknesses that you expose in your own systems. And the fear is that China's just sitting there lapping up all this intelligence. Now, capability-wise, yes, America and the West will eventually win the war, but it's how much destruction to Ukraine are you willing to put up with? And it seems Europe is and Ukraine is quite willing to put up with a lot. Now, Russia isn't as destructive today or as has been in the past, but there is many critics who say Ukraine's lying about how many drones and where they hit, because the majority are hitting vehicles, apparently. But long-range drones, I think the purpose of long-range drones is merely to get Ukraine to expend air defenses, costing them money. All right, so Russia's allegedly taken 2 communities. One is in the north, Oskakovia, and the other is the village near Kostakovia. It's here the Russians give its Russian name, so we're not worried about that. We just know that the one near Kostakovia and in the buffer zone are most likely to be true. Because they're marked on Ukrainian maps, not on. This is see Ukrainian map, okay? And I know some Ukrainians are, why aren't you using our maps? I am. I'm just not using your propaganda map. Because your propaganda map doesn't show any of the Russian drone strikes. At least this one does. Gives a more accurate picture of the war. Just like I don't use the Russian one, but rarely use the Russian one because the Russian one only shows the strikes by Ukraine in Russia, not the Russian strikes in Ukraine for some reason. Like, why aren't you showing that? If you're going to show drone strikes, show them all. It's weird. Every map is leaving stuff out. Every map is leaving stuff out that others have. Sure, if I had the time and I'd overlay all the maps, but then what's the point? It's going to improve your life. It's going to change your mind about Ukraine. Now, I don't know why the British have allowed Ukraine to take credit for this, but I guess it's Keir Starmer wanting to screw the British just one more time. But the Romanians have had enough. Now, they found many of these, actually, drifting. Now, some have made it all the way to Greece. Romania, though, they find at least one a week for months now. Most of these drones don't make it to their target. They're jammed. They break down. Some of them have run out of fuel chasing phantom targets. They've been told to put a self-destruct, what's it called? A geofence. That once they get 12 miles from the coast, they are to self-destruct. If they don't reach their target, now I don't know what NATO's going to do, but I do know Ukraine, the British Air Force has, upon occasion, flown out, shot down Ukrainian drones, and blamed it on Russia. But Ukrainian drones are not as accurate as they claim they are. Neither is Russia's. Everybody in this war is lying about something. But Romania, they're not calling out Russia, they're calling out Ukraine. They admitted, finally, yes, 2 days ago, they admitted that the drone that hit Romania, both of them, there was one a week ago and one a couple of days after. Both of them came from Ukraine, not from Russia. There's no tracking. Russia called them out, asked for the tracking. They didn't produce it within 24 hours. And then eventually the defense minister said, from you. Yeah, this is the problem. So many people don't go past the headline. 11 incidents of drones in the last 3 months. No, there's more than that. There's confirmed Ukrainian drones on NATO territory in previous 3 months. But there's more than that. There are so many unmarked drones every day. The dozens fell on Latvia 3 months ago. Was it a month ago? Sorry, during the Belarusian war games, in which they showed off hundreds of launchers ready to launch. Poroshenko wasn't lying. He says if Ukraine doesn't stop interfering in Belarus will hit hundreds of targets in Ukraine. Recently, deliveries from India arrived in Russia via overland. Now, the Russians have problems with their overland rail. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. A lot of their deliveries aren't making it. I don't know why they didn't spread them out on the trucks in the first place, but India has been ready to supply the Russian army and navy Now, I don't know why they didn't just say Russian armed forces, why they were specific to army or land forces. But I think this is because this is too big to be a air-launched projectile. So far, we do not know exactly to what extent India has provided Russia with logistics and technology, but India has already got orders from Russia under the Made in India initiative. Now, this is where I think supply bottlenecks and overland supply is rather low. Same out of Iran. And that the majority of manufactured missiles and drones are not sold to Russia, but they've been at it for quite some time. Now, India's research and development. Now, this is the thing. The first contractor was the Philippines. So, and they've already supplied Vietnam. Now, this could be, right, the reason, right, record revenue. India is deliberately selling these missiles at a slow rate and at a premium and making Russia desperate in order to force some sort of compromise, because it is well known these missiles were not solely developed by India, despite their claims. They are an Indian-Russian company, but they want the entire project made in India, and that's why I think they've been late, but they have allegedly delivered missiles in sometime in the last month, but they've yet to be used on Ukraine. But it's believed that 9 out of 10 drones purchased by Russia do not go to Ukraine either, nor the majority of equipment manufactured in Russia goes to Ukraine. Russia is stockpiling and letting Europe know they are stockpiling as a threat against invasion. Russia is suspected, not once, not twice, but 3 times in history, suspected that Europe was trying to trigger an invasion of Russia in order to get their hands on Eastern Europe. And of course, the Russians, they had been better allies to Eastern Europe. Yeah, a lot of this is Russia's fault. Had they been better allies to Eastern Europe, right now, there'd be no war in Ukraine. Communism probably wouldn't have failed as soon as it did. It probably would be like China, a long, slow decline. But many European companies do want to return to Russia, particularly manufacturing, because it's 30% cheaper on average, and it's half the distance from China, and the quality is a more, you're paying a little bit more, but for the quality, and plus there's a lot of stuff that both Europe and America want from Russia that they can't unless they get it from Brazil or India or China, but they can get it cheaper from Russia as well. And not just cheaper, cleaner. Rare earth minerals. Now, revenue decline overall in Europe is more like 20 between 15 and 25%. I think 30 to 40, unless you're talking about over a decade. Fatigue, there is definitely some Ukraine fatigue. There's also a general panic that that amongst companies, particularly steel industry, they're targeted first in war, is that a war will not be won or lost. It'll just be destructive and leave everybody broke, and no one wants that. Now, many foreign companies left the Russian market at the start of the military operation voluntarily, others by force from their nations. Right? Europe imposed sanction after sanction, with forcing companies to withdraw. Now there was an economic forum. Some companies, want to know about their return. They want to know about the assets they left behind, and come to some sort of post-war agreement about, we'll consider it the tax. We'll buy them back for whatever. We'll come to an agreement, because Russia right now only has China and India taking over their companies, and they don't want that. They don't want to. They want a less aggressive partner. Particularly from the US. Russia's just trying to fight to survive now. It's too small to be. It hasn't got an ideology to spread like communism. It's too small to want to be a global power. It just wants. Russians want to make money now. They wanted to be part of the winning in the West, but the West wouldn't have it. Europe, with has always been nasty to Russia, has always been exclusionary to Russians, has always used Russia as a beating post or as an enemy. Like 6 months before the Napoleonic War, Napoleon, says to Russia, "Oh, we can be friends." Really, though? That's the answer. Now, the Tsar was confused. He's English poor, he's French even worse. He thought he was highly educated. He thought he was wise to the world. He was poorly advised on Napoleon and misinformed by the British. And so, feeling deeply insulted, tensions between Russia and France just escalated. But Napoleon was a threat, and everyone wanted to know exactly how ambitious he was. He had attacked the British in Egypt. The British laughed it off, but increasingly, they started to realize, particularly Russia, that France was sending its spies out everywhere looking for military targets, plotting a route through Ukraine. So, while it may be a boring history lesson to some, people will start to see the same patterns over and over and over again. France talks about, can we be France? It's almost as if it's baked into their DNA to eventually betray anybody and everybody. And it's the general population, they have no love or loyalty anymore, or any faith, or any so without some sort of revival in Europe, absolutely, it's going to be a rough time. But ending the Ukraine war, will definitely puncture the liberal establishment, and but it's a long march to freedom. To be free of the World Economic Forum and the bureaucratic disaster of the liberal world order. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. Please support the channel. You can support me on Ko-Fi, Patreon, buy my books, buy my merch. I appreciate each and every one of you. See you in the next video, and bye for now.